What's going on, guys? Julian here, back with another video. For today's video, I'm going to be doing a post-burst protocol hand trap tier list and seeing how every hand trap fits into the format. If you're trying to get better at Yu-Gi-Oh! And not just play casually, check out my Discord called The Lab. We break down decks, theory, and competitive strategy every day. And if you want direct coaching, my Metafy subscription gives you exclusive access to twice weekly lessons, deck reviews, event prep, and testing with me and other pros. Links in the description. Come join us in the lab. So obviously, this is going to be looking at how I see the hand traps playing into like the top meta decks right now. This can always change if the meta develops as the format does, and I'll make a new video if that happens. But for now, these are going to be the best hand traps to play. So starting off, I guess we have Droll and Lockbird. So the thing about Droll, it's very hand trap very format dependent, obviously, and I think that it's actually a side deck maybe for this format. Surprisingly, I think a lot of people would put it in like a side deck staple, just because they think it's very good against Radiant Typhoon. I'm personally not a huge believer of this card against Radiant Typhoon. I think that if they play in the draw phase, it can get a lot going on. If you draw them after that, like Corsair can add back from the grave and everything, so it really doesn't hurt them that much. I'm more like a maybe on this card and seeing if you actually need to play it or not. Ash Blossom, I'm just going to put it straight in main deck staples. This card, the first hand trap you play should be Ash Blossom, stops Fua. It's honestly like good against Dracotel as well, which is going to be one of the top meta decks of the format. So definitely main deck staples for Ash Blossom. Purge, I think Purge is also like a main deck staple. If you can afford, pretty much like I'm just going to go and just put both the Dominus cards in here at the same time. If your deck can play those cards, like if you have, the luxury of not worrying about the attribute locks, you should be able to play both of them. I would put, Impulse above Purge. It's definitely a little bit better of a card for sure. However, yeah, there's both be up here. Purge is also good against Radiant Typhoon. It's good against Dracotel. It's even good against Yummy, stopping the Cupsy and the Cupsy way adds. So they're good. For the side frames, I guess we'll do them together because they're kind of a package. I would put them in side deck maybe, but probably below Droll. They are good cards. They're just kind of weird because obviously they can only work going second, and like the other hand traps that we're gonna have in here that only work going second are gonna be like Molcharmies, which give you a lot more value, and these come with a break as well. So I'm not too high on these. It's not like deltaing a Dracotel spell is that good either because you negate the activation. So a lot of the time, since they can get back to their spells with their engine, you're just kind of like losing a card. You're negging one pretty much. Next with Valor, I would put Valor in like main deck maybe. I don't have Mourner in here. I would like put, Valor and Mourner like with each other. They're pretty much like they do the same thing. The issue about Valor, or with Valor, excuse me, is that this card, in my opinion, is going to be weird in a format where the Fallen and Virtuous is a very popular card, right? It's going to be in like all the Dracotel main decks, between 1 and 3 copies. There's going to be 3 copies of it in all the Radiant Typhoon deck list, right? Which again, those are the top 2 decks that I think people are really looking at right now and really exploring. And then the other decks like Vanquish Soul, K9, like Valor's not that good against, right? It turns on Azuna. Yes, effect negation is good, but Ripper can negate it, blah, 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 blah. And then other decks like Yummy, Valor's not the best, right? Once you get past the Snatchy or like the Cupsy, after that, Valor becomes useless because they can just start tagging out and dodging Valors and Imperms and all that stuff. So I'll put this card at a maybe. I wouldn't want to side deck Valor because I don't think it's high impact enough to where, you're like adding it Valor and it has that much value. So I'll put this card in main deck maybe. Perulia, for me, is in between main deck maybe and side deck staple. It really depends on how your non-engine lineups and like the goal of your deck, like how well your deck can, like, for example, in a Dracotel list, you could totally have this card in your main deck, right? Because Dracotel can really converge their Molcharmies, and going second, like when they go first, they can converge the Molcharmies, just transfer them into other cards. And when you go second, like you just put your opponent under a floodgate and GG, because the deck is really good at going second. But for other decks, it's not as nice. Perulia, like it's not that good into the format. It got a little bit better into Dracotel. It's good against the Magistus cards, don't get me wrong. But for example, against like the new Albaz, right? If your opponent has a lot of engine in hand, you Perulia them. They go activate Fallen of the White, dump the card so they can get the advantage, chain 5 mana, get it out of their hands. So there's like a lot of ways to play around Perulia that I don't think it's that good into you know, the wide general format that it is, because it's not like a tier 0 format or anything. There's going to be a lot of decks played, even though Dracotel seems to be the most popular deck. This card is not, doesn't hit it hard enough and doesn't hit other decks, like for example Yummy decks, or like Mitsurugi cards are still real, right, and still legal. So for now I would say that Peru is like a side deck staple, because I think you for sure want to play this card at 3. It does hit the decks that it hits very well, and so you want to be able to side it in against those matchup. Cherries, put that card in your binder, guys. This card has always been bad, honestly. I played it for one tournament, and even though that was like a different meta, like this card just sucks, right? It's like trying to high roll your opponent and then like locking them out of your extra deck and by taking out a specific card. This card sucks. This card is gonna have no application. Like even if you cherries like Arthelions, your opponent's gonna have ways to get back to them. You're just gonna go -1 in the long run, and it's gonna be pretty bad. Okay, Rescue Ace Impulse. I think this card sucks also. I think that against Radiant Typhoon, it's gonna be too easy for them to deal with this. Yeah, you're going to be able to maybe draw 2, but it comes with a brick. Draw 2 is like super gambly. There's other hand traps you can play. I wouldn't even want to side deck this. Like the only reason you'd be playing this card ever is if you're playing Vanquishal, and as the Vanquishal GOAT, I'm going to tell you, you don't need to play this card. So I'd keep this in the binder. I'd also put Ogre in the binder. Ogre is only good against specifically, like it's not good against Ricotel. Terrible against Ricotel. It's like okay against the synchro, but if like the issue with the synchro, right, is if they're going second to your board and you ogre the synchro, it just goes to the grave, and now guess what? If they have a fusion there, now it has the secondary effect to interrupt you. So I really don't think ogre is going to be very good. And against Radiant Typhoon, it's good against the trap. It is good against the trap, but there are cards that are going to be better than ogre, to where this card as a hand trap's not good enough. Like Fallen and the Virtuous is like a card to play 1,000 times over ogre, that there's just no reason to be playing this card. Lancia, my biggest enemy. I would put Lancia probably below Droll, but above the side frames, and side deck maybe. This just really depends how, like specifically just Malice, right? There's no other deck that's like Lanciable that we care that much about, except for like maybe Lunalight, but Lunalight doesn't care that much about Lancia too much, right? So I would put this card in side deck maybe, and just see where Malice lands in the format. And even if Malice is like at the top of the format, like it's still, I don't think would land at the top of side deck staples, because Malice is pretty hit, right? And like no matter how much people want to play it, it's still naturally loses to hand traps more now, just because you know they have less like Malice cards, obviously, and you don't really need Lancia. Like you don't need a card to specifically target Malice when you could like be more narrow with it and like play a card like Meows, which brings me to my next card, Meows. I would put Meows probably maybe above the side frames, also above Lancia. It's still for me a side deck maybe. Like I'm not really wanting to play this card too much. It doesn't hit like, okay, useless against Ricotel. Radiant Typhoon, like if you chain it to something to summon back, yeah, you'll get 1 draw, but then they'll just play around it and they don't really care about the Meows. Against Vanquish Soul or like K9 decks in general, yeah, you'll get 1 draw from the Lantern, but again, like doesn't really matter. Doesn't really put them under any pressure. Against Mitsurugi, they're not really going to give you draws. Against Yummy, like Perulia is honestly like just as good, and so you don't really need to like spend a spot for that. So again, Meows, not great. Crow, God, yeah, this tier list, I'm seeing the orientation is going in. Crow, honestly, kind of sucks. It's kind of bad. Like when you think about it, it's not great. I'd probably put it, maybe it's like better than Lancia. There could be some applications for it. It's really good. It have one really good thing against Radiant Typhoon, where when you hit the big monsters out of the grave, or you can hit the trap out of the grave if you try to reset it from the grave, it's gone forever. That deck has no recursion from the banish pile. No recursion. Everything that gets banished gets stuck there forever. They can't get it back. So it's pretty good for that. I don't think that it's good against other decks enough to move it anywhere else. Like you'd be playing this card really only for that deck for Radiant Typhoon. It's not good against Dracotel. Like it has a few applications, but it really doesn't target it that well. So I'll put that here. Izuna, I think Izuna, if you can play the card, it's kind of like the Dominus cards. I'd say it's probably a little bit better than Purge. There are some pros and cons, but if you're a K9 deck, you obviously play this card. If you have room in your extra deck and you have room in your main deck for non-engine, this card is incredible still. Again, great card against Dracotel, right? Like Valon, book the Golamo, battle phase, make Zeus, wipe the whole board. Very, very strong card. So I would say this card is a main deck staple if you have space for it in terms of main deck and extra deck. Belle, okay. Belle kind of lands like with Perulia, in my opinion. I think Belle is a side deck staple or a mid deck baby. Like if it's not in your main deck, it should be in your side deck. And that's how I feel about this card, just because it's so good against Dracotel. And like it's kind of how the whole video is going, right? It's good against Dracotel, it's good against Radiant Typhoon, which from what I've seen, that is the main part of the meta, right? That is what people are focusing on. And it's even has applications against like K9, right? K9 cards, like you can stop Lupus, you can stop Lantern, right? It's a good card. So I think this card, again, yeah, if it's not in your side deck, put it in your main deck. If it's not in your main deck, put it in your side deck. Belle's very good. Against Radiant Typhoon, it hits Crosea, which is what matters a lot. Imperm. You see, Imperm's been weird for the last few formats. Before the last format, like the format that we're technically in now, right now, before Burst Protocol, Imperm, every format has kind of been a main deck staple. I low-key think Imperm is a side deck staple. I think that it doesn't hit the format wide enough, again, to main deck it in every deck. When I'm saying staple, I'm saying like if you can play this card 100%. If my deck can play Purge, Ash, Izuna, okay, that doesn't work. Actually, yes, it does. Purge, Ash, Izuna does work. If you can play Purge, Ash, Izuna in your deck, play all three, right? If you can play Impulse, Ash, play both, for sure, 100%, right? But obviously, everyone can play Imperm, and like the only deck being like Dracotel, like doesn't really want to play Imperm. But I could definitely see myself citing this card in every single one of my list, just because of how good it is against specifically K9 decks. K9 decks, you like, this is the one card that if you cannot have the Impulse for the K9 deck, you can have the Imperm, so that's okay, right? So I would 100% play this card in my side deck at the very least. I'm not so sure if I would put it in my main deck, but I know it would be in my side deck just because it's just such a good like umbrella card. It hits everything, right? It hits everything. But there are stronger cards that you can play in your main deck that are more targeted to what people are playing in the meta. So again, Imperm's good. My other issue with it is that it can be dodged by the Fallen and Virtuous, which is another reason why I wouldn't want to main deck it. But it's good that you'd want to side deck it for sure for those K9 decks. Retalcy, honestly, I'm in between Binder and side deck maybe for this one. I think this card got a lot worse with the release of the Fallen and the White Dragon. The Dracotel deck, which is what people were playing this, right? They were playing this to beat the Dracotel deck and like maybe catch some Lunalights like on the way there. This card gets a lot worse when, you know, you add a bunch of Weights of Fuse that are just not spell cards, right? And it's not great going, like, it's not like a good Floodgate going first, because if you set up a mid board and then your opponent, you summon this on their Ketu, they're just going to not fuse and beat over it, right? So like, I'll put it at the bottom of side deck maybe, because it maybe, you know, has like some applications to where it could be good if like it's really got nothing else and you gotta try to respect Dracotel. Like you could put this in, but it's not gonna be that good. So I'll put it at the bottom of side deck maybe. Nib for me is gonna be at the top of side deck staple as well. So like guys, I'm not kidding. I'm looking at all my lists, all my lists right now. Either Belle's in the main, and like these are my nine hand traps, right? 3 Perulia, 3 Nib, 3 Imperm. Then my last 6 slots is like 3 going first cards and like 3 more hand traps from this list, depending on like how my deck is looking. Like for sure, all these cards are on my list, and all these cards, if you know, they can be in my list. Nib, I think there's rarely a format where you don't want Nib at least in your side deck. You play against some stupid combo deck, and you're like looking at your opponent combo, and you're like, yeah, I could have nibbed him right there. That would have been really good, right? You always want Nib in your side deck, especially like if you can play a lot of hand traps, you can start pairing it very well. So yeah, Nib side deck staple for sure. Very good card. Fantasme. Not a lot of link summoning happening. I'm not gonna lie. Fantasme in the binder. I don't see this card making an appearance. Song of the Dominators in the binder. This card also sucks. This card says you can't use hand traps. Hand traps are like the best way to play Yu-Gi-Oh! If If you let your opponent build a full board and you try to just break it with board breakers, it's possible. But there are some stupid decks out there, like Triff's yummy Elvenwood deck. Have fun playing board breakers against that and getting hand looped, right? So yeah, I'm gonna put this in the binder. Fuelos. Yo, one time Jib said that you were not supposed to play Fuelos and Malice. I know that's not the format we're talking about right now, but Jib, that was just wrong. And in the comments, let me know if Jib is stupid for saying that, because, dude, main deck this card. Okay, this card can get Ash. Okay, this card has outs. But guess what? Out of all your hand traps, when it resolves, you have the highest win rate. That's all that matters, right? This card gives you the highest chance going second out of all your cards. It makes your opponent makes weak board, and then you break them. It's so broken. Like, come on. Main deck staple at Fuelos, obviously. Bestials. Bestials are weird. So, okay. Bestials are weird because they're not great to Dracotel. They're useless, unactivatable against Rita Typhoon. So, and against like K9 decks, they also suck, right? So if we go from like the top to the bottom, they're definitely not main deck staples. Are they side deck staples? Are there decks that they're good against? Again, Dracotel, no. Yummy, they're all right. Like Fiendsmith decks, sure, but no one's playing Fiendsmith decks. They're good against Mitsurugi decks, but there's not that much like just Mitsurugi running around. And like Yummy Mitsu, for example, like a Bestial is not going to do enough. It needs to be heavily paired. I'll probably put the Bestials at the top of side deck maybe. I have considered putting it in my side decks and trying to find good applications for it. But I think it's pretty tough. Next, Contact Seat in the binder. This card sucks. Shifter, I mean, if you can play it, yeah, this is still the best hand trap. This is better than Fuelos, right? It resolves like 3 times more often because only called by is the real out, right? So yeah, Shifter at the top of main deck staples. So that's going to be it for the tier list. Before we get out of here, I just want to kind of point out this tier list, right? Actually, I feel like it's more bottom heavy than before. I think that a big part of this is that breakers are going to be pretty good this format. And I know people always say this, but I think the breaker that matters the most right now is Phone and the Virtuous, because that is a board breaker that loops itself and just keeps the card advantage up. And like if I know this is a hand trap tier list, but if I was going to put this on the list, I would put, Phone and the Virtuous in this, like maybe below Impulse, but still in main deck staples. That card, if you can play that card, play that card. That card is really good. But yeah, that's going to be it for the video. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.